Most people think you need a lot of money to start a startup. They imagine you need investors, big funding, or wealthy connections before you can even begin. But the truth is very different. Most successful startups did not start with millions of dollars. Many of them started with something much smaller, sometimes just a few $1,000s, sometimes even less. And the first real financial milestone for many founders is raising their first $10,000. That first $10,000 can be enough to build your first product, test your idea, launch a basic version of your platform, or even start getting your first customers. But the question is, where does that first $10,000 come from? If you don't have wealthy investors, venture capital connections, or rich family members, how do you raise that money? In this video, we're going to break down exactly how founders raise their first $10,000 for a startup, the strategies that actually work, and the mindset you need if you want people to believe in your idea. Before we go further, if you enjoy content about startups, technology, and building successful ideas, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like this video. And make sure you stay until the end, because toward the end of this video, I'm going to share something extremely important that many founders ignore when trying to raise their first startup funding, and understanding it can make the difference between getting funded and struggling for years. Now, let's get into it. The first thing you must understand is that raising your first $10,000 is not really about money. It's about trust. People give money to founders they trust. If someone believes in you, they are far more willing to support your idea. But if people do not trust you or believe you can execute the idea, raising money becomes very difficult. This is why the first step in raising your first startup funding is building credibility. Credibility comes from your knowledge, your track record, your commitment, and the way you present your idea. When people see that you understand the problem you're trying to solve and that you are serious about building a real solution, they become more comfortable supporting you. Now, let's talk about the first common way founders raise their first $10,000. That method is bootstrapping. Bootstrapping simply means funding the startup yourself. This could come from personal savings. It could come from income from a job. It could come from freelancing or consulting. Many founders underestimate how powerful bootstrapping can be. When you invest your own money into an idea, you're proving that you believe in it. This also makes it easier for other people to support you later, because they can see that you are personally committed. Bootstrapping also teaches founders discipline. When resources are limited, you learn how to prioritize what really matters. Instead of spending money on unnecessary things, you focus only on building the core product. Now, let's move to the second method. One of the most common ways founders raise their first startup money is through friends and family. This is often called the friends and family round. These are people who already know you. They have seen your work. They understand your character. Because of that relationship, they may be willing to take an early risk on your idea. But there is an important rule when raising money from friends and family. You must treat it professionally. Explain your idea clearly. Explain the risks. Explain how the money will be used. And be honest that startups are risky. Never pressure anyone to invest, and never promise guaranteed returns. Transparency builds long-term trust. Now, let's talk about the third method. This method is becoming increasingly popular today, and that method is pre-selling your product. Pre-selling means selling your product before it is fully built. Instead of waiting until everything is finished, founders offer early access to customers. For example, if you're building a software platform, you could offer early access subscriptions. Customers pay in advance to secure access when the product launches. This does two powerful things. First, it generates early revenue. Second, it validates the idea. If people are willing to pay before the product is finished, it means the problem you are solving is real. This is extremely valuable information for any startup. Another method founders use to raise their first $10,000 is freelancing around the idea. Let's say your startup is related to software development, digital marketing, design, or consulting. You can offer services related to that skill while simultaneously building your startup. The income from those services can be reinvested into your startup. Many successful founders started exactly this way. They use freelancing or consulting income to fund the early stages of their businesses. Now, let's talk about another strategy that many people overlook: That strategy is partnerships. Sometimes the fastest way to raise your first startup money is by partnering with someone who brings resources to the table. This could be a co-founder who has technical skills. It could be a partner who already has access to customers. It could even be someone willing to invest a small amount of money in exchange for equity in the business. A strong partnership can accelerate the early stages of startup because instead of doing everything alone, you combine skills, resources, and networks. Another powerful option for early startup funding is startup competitions and grants. Many organizations host competitions for innovative ideas. Winners often receive funding, mentorship, or support. Startup grants are also available from some governments, innovation programs, and development organizations. These grants provide non-repayable funding to support entrepreneurship and innovation. Unlike loans, grants do not require repayment. However, they often require clear proposals and strong ideas. Now, let's talk about something extremely important when trying to raise your first $10,000. That is your pitch. Your pitch is the way you explain your idea. Many founders struggle not because their ideas are bad, but because they cannot explain them clearly. A strong startup pitch should answer a few key questions. What problem are you solving? Why does this problem matter? How does your solution work? Who are your customers? How will the business make money? And how will the first $10,000 help move the company forward? When people understand your idea clearly, they become more confident supporting it. Clarity builds confidence. Confusion creates doubt. Another important factor in raising early startup funding is momentum. People like to support things that are already moving forward. If they see progress, they feel more comfortable contributing. Progress can mean building a prototype, launching a website, creating a waiting list, getting early users. Even small progress signals commitment and seriousness. This makes it easier for others to believe in your vision. Now, here is something many founders don't realize. Raising the first $10,000 is often harder than raising larger amounts later, because in the early stage, you have very little proof. No revenue, no large user base, no track record for that specific idea. But once a startup begins to gain traction, raising larger funding becomes easier. Investors prefer to support momentum rather than uncertainty. This is why the first $10,000 is so important. It helps you reach the next stage. It allows you to build the first version of your product. It allows you to test the idea. It allows you to prove that customers actually want the solution. And once you have that proof, the conversation with investors becomes very different. Now, let's talk about the important insight I mentioned earlier. Something many founders misunderstand when trying to raise their first startup funding. Many founders approach fundraising with the mindset of asking for money, but the most successful founders approach it differently. They focus on building value first. When people see value, funding becomes easier. Instead of asking, "Can you give me money for my idea?" the better approach is showing people something real. A prototype, a working demo, early customers, a waiting list. When people see real progress, they begin to believe the startup could succeed. And when belief grows, support follows. So the real secret to raising your first $10,000 is not just persuasion. It is progress. Build something small. Show momentum. Demonstrate commitment. And focus on solving a real problem. Because at the end of the day, people do not fund ideas. They fund builders. They fund people who are willing to take action, learn quickly, adapt to challenges, and continue moving forward even when the path is uncertain. And once people see that kind of determination, raising your first $10,000 becomes much more possible. Because every successful startup begins the same way, with someone who believes enough in an idea to start building. Welcome to Cenedesk, your guide to learning tech, building real skills, and starting your career the smart way. Hit subscribe and join thousands of learners growing every day.